In the late 19th century, Germany joined the race for colonies in Africa. It established a protectorate in southwest Africa, present-day Namibia. This land was home to various indigenous groups, including the Herero and Nama peoples. The Herero were pastoralists, raising cattle. The Nama were also pastoralists, but practiced a more mobile lifestyle. German settlers coveted the land and resources of this region. They began seizing land from the indigenous populations, disrupting their way of life. This led to growing resentment and tension between the indigenous communities and the German colonists. The German colonial administration implemented policies to assert control over the indigenous population. These policies often involved forced labor and harsh punishments. Indigenous people were subjected to discriminatory laws and regulations. The Germans viewed them as inferior and sought to exploit their labor for economic gain. The situation grew increasingly dire as the indigenous communities faced displacement and oppression. Their traditional leadership structures were undermined and their culture and way of life came under threat. By 1904, tensions reached a boiling point. The Herero, led by Chief Samuel Maharero, rose in rebellion against German rule. They attacked German farms and settlements, seeking to reclaim their land and freedom. The Nama, under the leadership of Hendrik Witbooi, soon joined the uprising. The German response was swift and merciless. They deployed their military under the command of General Lothar von Trotha. Von Trotha, a ruthless military commander, was determined to crush the rebellion with overwhelming force. He viewed the indigenous population as a threat to German colonial ambitions and ordered his troops to exterminate them. Von Trotha issued an extermination order that left no room for doubt about his intentions. He declared that the Herero were no longer German subjects and were to be wiped out. Those who surrendered would be shot, those who fled would be hunted down and killed. Women and children were not spared. This marked the beginning of a systematic campaign of annihilation. The German army unleashed a reign of terror upon the Herero and Nama peoples. They pursued a scorched earth policy, destroying villages, livestock, and water sources. The Herero and Nama, weakened and dispossessed, were driven into the unforgiving Omaheke Desert. Thousands perished from starvation, dehydration, and exhaustion during their desperate flight. Those who survived the desert faced another horror: concentration camps. The Germans established concentration camps at places like Shark Island. Here, prisoners were subjected to forced labor, starvation, and disease. Conditions were deplorable, with overcrowding, inadequate sanitation, and rampant illness. Many died from typhus, smallpox, and other diseases. Others were worked to death. The genocide continued until 1908. By then, an estimated 65,000 Herero, approximately 80% of their population, and 10,000 Nama, about half of their population, had been killed. The survivors were left traumatized and dispossessed, their culture and way of life shattered. The Herero and Nama genocide stands as one of the darkest chapters of colonialism in Africa. It is a stark reminder of the brutality and racism that fueled European imperial ambitions. For decades, the German government denied and downplayed the atrocities committed in Southwest Africa. It was not until the late 20th century that Germany began to acknowledge its responsibility for the genocide. In recent years, Germany has taken steps towards reconciliation. It has issued apologies and provided some financial aid to Namibia. However, many descendants of the Herero and Nama feel that these gestures are insufficient. They continue to demand full reparations and the return of ancestral lands. The wounds of the past run deep, and the legacy of the genocide continues to shape relations between Germany and Namibia today.